It started with a traffic stop, something as ordinary as a license plate, slightly altered, nothing that should have ended anyone's life. But on a June day in 2000, in Cleveland, Ohio, a 32-year-old patrolman named Wayne Leon pulled over a car near a gas station for exactly that reason. He had no way of knowing what was waiting for him when he stepped out of his cruiser and walked toward the driver's side window. The man behind the wheel was Quisi Bryan, already on parole for robbery, already carrying an active warrant for drug charges, theft, and parole violations. Bryan knew that if Leon ran his name, it was over. So before Leon could even reach the car, Bryan climbed out, raised a .45 caliber pistol, and shot him in the face. Wayne Leon died instantly. What happened next was almost unbelievable. A motorist nearby witnessed the whole thing, and instead of calling it in and driving away, they gave chase. Bryan fired at them repeatedly, shooting at a civilian who refused to stop following him until he finally lost control of his car and crashed in a parking lot. He ran. He found a group of men and bribed them to drive him somewhere safe. He threw the .45 in a dumpster and got himself a different gun. He thought he'd covered his tracks, but police already had him. They traced the license tag back to Bryan. Within hours, got a description of a second car from his ex-wife and found him driving it. From the shooting to the arrest, less than a day had passed. By November of 2000, Quisi Bryan had been indicted and sentenced to death by the state of Ohio for the murder of Wayne Leon. He was placed on death row, and for most people following the case, that was where the story ended. A cop killer. A career criminal who robbed drug dealers to survive. Justice served, as far as the courts were concerned. But death row has a way of unearthing things. And what investigators found when they started running DNA tests would reframe everything they thought they knew about who Quisi Bryan really was. In 2007, DNA evidence linked Bryan to a string of abductions and rapes stretching back across the entire decade of the 1990s. Then in 2013, more matches, or more women, more crimes that had gone unsolved for years, while Bryan walked free, dealt drugs, and lived his life. The last rape had occurred only weeks before he killed Wayne Leon, and the details that came out during the subsequent trials were as disturbing as anything in the murder case itself. One victim testified that Bryan had impersonated a police officer to kidnap her. Another described being grabbed at knife point while walking home from an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, still grieving the death of her son, and being dragged to an abandoned house where he assaulted her and told her he would kill her if she ever said a word. Bryan was charged with the rapes of 4 women in 2007 and received a 48-year sentence, though the Ohio Supreme Court later cut it to 22 years, ruling the court had applied outdated statutes. Then in 2014 he was charged again, this time for the woman he'd taken at knife point. He chose to represent himself at trial and used the time to challenge her credibility, question her alleged criminal history, and attack the DNA evidence that had finally caught up with him. It didn't work. In 2017, he was sentenced to an additional 50 years. His death sentence for Wayne Leon's murder, meanwhile, has had a life of its own. A federal judge overturned it in 2015 over concerns about the dismissal of a black juror during the original trial. The Sixth Circuit reversed that decision in 2016, reinstating the death sentence. The Ohio Supreme Court signed Bryan's death warrant for a 2022 execution date. Then Governor Mike DeWine delayed it, then delayed it again. It now sits, officially, at November 15, 2028. Quisi Bryan remains on Ohio's death row today, surrounded by the accumulated weight of everything he did to the people whose lives he crossed, and waiting to see whether that date will finally hold.